Hi everyone, welcome back to The Learning Gardener. My name is Pip, this is Ladybird or Birdie, and this guy with his back to you is Raphael. Today we are going to be planting our potatoes and our garlic, and we've got 3 beds that are prepped and ready to go. One that has been waiting for a little while for this to happen, and 2 that I did last night, which is why these are uncovered. We had some Roma tomatoes in this bed and a little bit of basil and some chives, and this bed had recently had our homegrown compost added, and hopefully the audio is okay because the wind is picking up a little bit. We had some homegrown compost added in. I added some more of the potting mix, which unfortunately is quite alkaline, so I have added some soil acidifier, and then I've topped it with mushroom compost. Last night we do have a 6-litre Oya in here. They're not that handy for root vegetables, but it's in, so it's going to be staying in, and we've got one homemade one down the other end. So they're staying, and we'll just plant around them. In this bed we're going to be doing the potatoes, and we've got a garlic bed behind the camera, which obviously I will show you later, and another potato bed over to the side. Now, what we've got in terms of varieties, we've got 3 kilos of Pontiac Red, which is not a variety I have ever planted before, but I see a lot of homesteading videos and people using and raving about red Pontiacs, and I forgot I already had 1 bag at home, so I picked up 2 at the nursery yesterday, so we got 3 kilos. We're going to make it work. We're going to put them in this bed. Last year I had about 2 kilos of Nicola potatoes in, it was probably 5/6 of a bed this size, and we got 17.6 kilos of I keep wanting to say tomatoes, but potatoes from it, which has been great. They have all resprouted reasonably quickly because we had quite a few huge deluges of rain this summer, and they're in a bed just off to this side, and they're just starting to emerge. So hopefully we will get maybe like 20 kilos of potatoes from this bed. That would be nice. Along with the red Pontiacs, we have got some Kennebecs. Again, this is a type of potato I have never been able to buy the seed of before. I saw it at the nursery, so I grabbed it, and again, I've seen a lot of people talking about how Kennebecs make really nice fried potatoes, whereas the red Pontiacs are better for like mashed potatoes and things like that. So we've got a few different varieties. We've got Nicolas, we've got red Pontiacs, and we've got Kennebecs. In terms of garlic, I've never successfully grown garlic. Hey, Raph? I think a lot of it has been about timing. So for example, last year we got the keys to this house in the middle of winter, and I put my garlic in, and I think it was too late. It didn't get enough of a cold period, and not long after we moved in we got heavy rain, and this soil really holds the moisture in winter, and I think they just rotted. So I was going to put my garlic in last week until the weekend before, but then I saw a forecast that said we were maybe going to have up to 75 mils of rain. As we got closer to the time, it was nearly 300 mils of rain, and in the end it was 100. So I'm glad I waited because the soil has had a chance to drain out. I have also had a chance to clear out the tomato beds to make room for this, and I know that I am not supposed to be planting these. It actually says do not plant where potatoes or tomatoes have grown last year. I don't have a choice, so I ended up putting tomatoes in just about every single bed, so it is what it is. And these specific beds that I'm planting in are the ones that get some sun in summer. We don't get in winter. We don't get a lot of daylight hours obviously in winter, but we don't get a lot of sun in this garden in winter, so I have to plant in specific beds if I want some produce. So for example, now it is 10 a.m, which normally we would be bathed in sunlight here, but in the last 2 weeks it's really sort of shifted and the temperatures have dropped and we're still in full-blown shade. So they need to go in the beds where the tomatoes have been. It's just life. It is what it is. The interesting thing about having my homegrown compost in this bed is that I did start to see some weeds come through, which is unfortunate, but I'll show you in a second the bed just off to this side here. These tomatoes were dead and gone, and I chucked a little bit of compost in because I had some left over, and they have taken off like rockets again, and they are producing bigger tomatoes than they did earlier in the season. So at least, even if my compost wasn't hot enough to break down all the weeds, it's nice and juicy and the plants are enjoying it. So let me just show you that now. I was going to rip these guys out because the whole trellising system has flopped over and I can't even get in between. And I pulled off some of the big tomatoes yesterday so that they didn't get stolen overnight. But you can see it's decided to become productive again. So I'm just going to give these guys maybe another couple of weeks, maybe another week or two, and then we'll see how we're going. So this is the other bed that had the pineapple tomatoes that I think I only got one from. The rest got raided by blackbirds and bush rats no matter what I did. And we're going to put the garlic in this bed because it's not as deep. And then this is where we put the Nicola potatoes, and it's also become the dumping ground for a lot of the squeaky dinosaurs and the trellising systems as they come out. But you can see, except Raffy's in the way, some of those Nicola potatoes are starting to emerge, but I thought we could put some garlic in here if we needed to around the base of these tomatoes. These are Roma tomatoes that I planted much later in season, so I want to give them a chance. This bed was potatoes before. This was our Dutch cream potatoes, and this is where we're going to plant some more potatoes, the Kennebec. We are going to be working around school holiday noise, so I'm sorry if there's any interesting background noises in this video, but we're just doing the best we can with the days we've got available. So first thing I'm going to be doing is amending the soil. So at the moment I am adding some worm castings. I actually need to harvest some of mine from the worm farm too, but we don't really have time for that today. We've just got to get in and get this done. Then I'm going to be adding some blood and bone and then some slow release fertilizer. Hopefully this is enough to counterbalance the effect of the tomatoes being in this bed. I realize some of the planting guide recommendations, like don't plant potatoes after tomatoes, is about nutrition, which is why I'm going to heavily amend these beds. I also think that because the soil that we put in back in winter last year was so alkaline, some of the plants struggled to suck up any nutrients that was in the soil. I didn't think that that was the case, but I guess that's been evidenced by these tomatoes off to my left that have really taken off like a rocket once I added a little bit of homemade compost. So I am going to add quite a bit of fertilizer compared to what I would normally add, and I'm hoping that over time I can generate more and more of my own compost, and then I won't be reliant on things like getting mushroom compost and adding that in. The other part of the recommendations for crop rotation is definitely about pest pressure and diseases in the soil, but I'm hoping that we're only one season in, so hopefully we should be okay. Our pest pressure was luckily very, very minimal. I think that's because, number one, we're only 1 year in. They haven't really necessarily worked out that we're here. The most dangerous pests that we had for the crops were the blackbirds, and the cockatoos, which could be easily dealt with by the hounds. And the cockatoos, once the dogs were let out, really didn't come back, and they are so destructive. They just love to chop plants off at the ground level, and they don't eat them, they just do it for fun, which is extremely annoying. And the blackbirds didn't appreciate being chased out of the tomatoes by the dogs. My other theory on why we had low pest pressure is that we have a lot of really beautiful little birds which you can hopefully hear singing in the background, like finches and willy wagtails, and I don't know all their names, I really should. Some beautiful yellow-breasted ones that like to hang about and eat the bugs, and you often see them early in the morning or right before sunset darting in between the garden beds. Especially I found it on my brassicas, so I think they were doing a lot of caterpillar eating, which is fantastic. And also anytime I've found grubs and things like that, I have relocated them a few doors down to my best friend's bearded dragon, who also appreciates a snack. So the red Pontiacs say they want to be buried 10 centimetres deep, 25 centimetres between tubers, and 75 centimetres between rows. I don't think we're going to be achieving that, but let's pop them in the ground and see how we go. I mentioned in a previous video that I'd had a procedure done. I recently had a breast cancer scare, which was not a lot of fun, just generally, but especially when you've had cancer before. It was like a trip down PTSD memory lane, which I didn't really enjoy at all. And I think the downside of that, I mean, obviously the upside is I'm cancer free, so woohoo, but I ended up getting a cold because I think just the stress that I was under at that point. And you know, it is what it is. That's my life. I'm at a much higher risk of any cancer because of the treatment that I've had, because of the type of cancer that I've had, and just also terrible genetics. So we are just spending some time in the garden today to get the mental health stuff back on the right track, and that has really been one of the biggest things that I have learnt since moving out of Sydney and moving down to the south coast where I live now. Like, I never thought Sydney was high pressure, high pace. I always thought Sydney was pretty boring, to be totally honest, but life has been so much better and so much happier down here, especially since I got this house and I now get to spend so much time outside. Like, I was never a gardener before COVID, so I just started in COVID because I needed something beautiful in my life, and gardening has really just given me so much happiness and so much like lasting joy, because I have something that I'm working towards. I love seeing things grow. It's so amazing to me what can be achieved in one season, which like this year was totally the time that I learnt that. The other thing I learnt was that I put too much mulch on stuff. So the other day when we had that 100 mil of rain, I thought for sure all the beds are going to be beautiful and well watered in, and I pulled back some of the fresh mulch on some of the beds that I just put in, and it was fairly dry underneath, and I think that's why I feel like all I do is water. So I think the plants did pretty well, all things considering, and considering that I'm just learning, but you know, you make mistakes, you try again next year, it's not the end of the world. So putting a little bit less mulch on today, and then as the potatoes emerge I will put on some more. So these are the things we learn along the way, and I appreciate you guys tolerating the delays in editing and releasing videos. So obviously the health issues have created some of that. The other problem was I had an SD card and I had like 6 or 7 videos, and I'm now just realizing how many videos I had filmed. They're all gone. I don't know where they are, so it's unfortunate. So it's a lot of work down the drain, but it is what it is. But I just want to say I really appreciate you guys hanging out with us. I really appreciate all the new subscribers. I am hoping that the more subscribers that we get, the more we can build up this channel and more time we can actually spend out here together doing fun things, and the more time I can spend at home rather than working 13 or 14 hour days. So thanks so much for following, and let's get back to our potatoes and our garlic. I'm not sure how much of this garlic that I have will actually fit in this bed and how much will need to be planted underneath the tomatoes, but we're going to find out. So as I said before, part of the reason why I didn't plant the potatoes and the garlic earlier was because of the rain forecast, and I was really worried that they were going to rot, because that's what happened to me last year. None of my garlic came up last year. I think, as I said, a lot of that is because I put it in too late. But previously, even when my garlic has sprouted, it's just been mauled by aphids. So I'm really hoping that this is the third year that I will finally get to eat some homegrown garlic. To try and counterbalance that, I have bought 4 different types. I'm hoping with that at least one variety is a bit more aphid proof and pip proof, and we get some garlic. So we have 2 bulbs of white crookneck, we have 2 bulbs of colossus, 2 bulbs of elephant, and 2 bulbs of New Zealand red garlic. Now, I also deliberately bought some that would give me garlic scapes, assuming that everybody comes out of the ground this year. That would be an improvement from last year. So we're going to try and pop them in this bed. This is one of the sunnier beds, so I am hopeful that if I have tomatoes in front of it and garlic behind, that at least then they won't be sun shielded by if I plant tomatoes or something early next spring. Sure, there are some dahlias here, but these I planted the last week of summer. I'm surprised they're about to bloom, but they won't be here for too much longer. Let's cross our fingers and hope for some garlic. Really, my luck this far with garlic has been fairly abysmal. So the instructions say that it likes a slightly acidic soil, which is also why I've chosen this bed over some of the other beds, because as I mentioned, the base soil is quite alkaline. Even though I have put soil acidifier in them, they want 20 centimeter rows 20 centimeters apart, 10 to 15 centimeters between them, and they're planted 3 to 5 centimeters deep. So let's get to it and see how we go. And in this case with the garlic, I'm definitely going to give them the allotted space, because I've got plenty of other places where I can plant garlic, like around tomatoes and stuff like that. Whereas the potatoes really take up a whole garden bed, and it's mostly this side of the garden that I'm going to be able to use in winter. So for produce that really needs sunshine, I don't want to dedicate 50% of my beds to potatoes, although I'll be pretty close to doing that. I really want some broccoli. Homegrown broccoli is so good. First thing I'm going to do is work the amendments in. So I've put blood and bone and worm castings and the slow release fertilizer in. We also topped this bed yesterday with the mushroom compost. The only place I haven't amended yet is where Big Bird is sitting, for fairly obvious reasons. So we will get that done once she moves. But for the time being, we're going to work around her. She loves sitting in the empty garden beds, and she's a good little hunter of bush rats stealing our tomatoes and blackbirds, so she's allowed to sit. It's her house too. We've got 3 rows of the white crookneck and nearly 4 full rows of the New Zealand red, and we've got just enough space for maybe 1 row of the elephant garlic, which, given the size of these bulbs, it's only geez Louise, there's only 3 in 1 garlic head bulb thing. I am going to give them a lot of space each. They're massive. I don't think I've ever seen a garlic bulb that big, even when I've bought elephant garlic or elephant garlic. Far out. Okay, let's get these guys buried. And we want to get these 5 centimeters deep, so the tips are just below the surface. And I'm wondering if maybe last year one of the other things that thwarted my garlic harvest was perhaps I put them a little bit too deep. So we will see if we have any more luck this year. And you guys might wonder why I let the dogs climb in the garden beds, and I mean there is an element of it to their house too. But previously when I've had Birdie outside, oh, she makes a racket. And, you know, I worry about her driving neighbours crazy and things like that. And you've probably heard her carrying on in the background of other videos when I've put her inside. But obviously that's not like a great solution. And we've been doing a lot of reactivity training. And I've been wondering if she has some pain, because she's 2 years old and we only got her when she was just over 1. And she had a fairly horrific story. And so I've been wondering if she had pain, and recently we put her on painkillers just to test, and that's her woofing now. And it's made a very big difference to her ability to settle at home. You'll hear there's a mower going in the background, and previously there was no hope of filming anything or even existing in a world with Birdie with a mower on before. So the fact that she can now settle in the garden and she comes to be with me, I'm totally fine if she wants to stomp on stuff, because she's happier and more settled and she's more responsive to her training. So that's why I let her go where she wants to go. You guys might remember this bed. We harvested the Dutch cream disappointing potato harvest from this bed. Oh, there's another little teeny tiny one in the mulch. Probably a couple of weeks ago. And since then, as I have with all the beds, I have added some chicken poo pellets. So that's something that I've added to try and combat what I suspect is some nutritional issues for the plants given the alkalinity of the soil. But we don't need this homemade oya in there if we're going to be having more potatoes in here. This soil is actually still quite moist from the rain that we had last week, so that's interesting to see, because I covered this bed in quite a thick layer of mulch because I didn't know how long it was going to be until I got around to planting it, and I didn't want it just sitting there losing nutrition. But obviously I didn't have anything that was ready to go in, either because of the rain or because my first plantings of autumn seedlings got stolen by a little critter, and then because the weather's cooled down, it's taken forever for the next lot to come up, but they're still not ready to go in the ground. So for the time being, this little ladybird nasturtium has been happy as a clam. So what I'm going to do is, once I get all the mulch off and all the oyas out, there's still 2 more that have got to come out, I'm going to amend the soil like we did with the other beds, with the blood and bone and the slow release fertilizer and the worm castings. This one does not have mushroom compost on top, and we have no more mushroom compost, so it'll just have to make do with what it's got. But it's already been refilled with, unfortunately, the same soil as what was originally put in there, but it is on the list to get some homemade compost when the homemade compost is ready. There is one barrel that's getting close to being ready, but I find it really slow to actually transition over. The spinner is actually the fastest compost producer, and I mean, if I had more time, I would probably flip the compost more between the actual barrels so that it had a bit more aeration and it broke down a bit faster, but it's quite a job to do that. So I can see why people have open stalls. It's a bit easier to get in there with a fork and just flip it all. But I'm happy to see some lovely little worms in here. I'm going to give you guys some potatoes. Don't eat them, just make the potatoes happy. Thank you in advance. So the Kennebecs are going in here, and that's going to be the last of the potatoes, which is good because we are almost out of fertilizer and almost out of blood and bone. And then we've got Kennebecs here, sweet potatoes here, garlic just behind me, and then off to my right and behind me we've got 2 potato beds, and just to my right we have got the last, or pretty much the last, of the tomatoes, and I'm going to plant the leftover garlic around the base there, and then we are done for today and onto some inside jobs. I picked up some pineapple and I've got to check if it's ripe enough. I want to try and make some pineapple relish and can that up today. Better mix this in before Rafi gets too many ideas about having some blood and bone, hey? Bit of cheeky chops. And unless I've got some hidden somewhere, we are all out of slow release fertilizer. It's nearly midday and the sun is just starting to peek out and bathe this area in a bit more light. And this is what it's like here in winter. You have to really choose where you place things, and that's how the garden beds got placed where they were. So I'm really glad I actually moved in winter, because I would have thought that I could plant in a totally different place if I'd moved in summer. These are the colossus bulbs going in under the tomatoes. I've got a couple more that I need to tuck in around the side, and then we've got one more bulb, one more clump of elephant garlic to plant in. So I'm going to move the compost, move the mulch and pop them in, and then water these guys in. All I have now fertilizer wise is a tiny bit of blood and bone and the worm castings, so that's just going to have to be enough. When the tomatoes come out and I put something else like brassicas, I don't know, whatever else is going to go in here, I haven't had time to plan, then I will add some slow release fertilizer, but I've got to go to the store to get more, and that's not going to happen today because it's nearly lunchtime and I'm getting hungry. So I'm going to quickly wrap all this up, and I just want to say again, I really appreciate you guys hanging out with us and watching our videos, and I would really appreciate it if you would consider not eating the fertilizer, Rafi, if you would consider subscribing, because hopefully we will be able to make this a at least side hustle down the road. Maybe even a full-time job would be amazing, because then I could spend all my time out in the garden and hanging out with you guys, and that would be sensational. But we're going to finish up here and then head inside and check out those pineapples after lunch. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys hanging out with us, and I hope you've enjoyed this video, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.